Welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast, where we sit down and have real conversations with business leaders that have been where you are. During these interviews, we'll dive into what it takes to improve systems and champion processes that maximize performance. Each week, our trailblazing guests share their experiences and understanding of the workforce to help inspire change, challenge our thinking, and share what it takes to successfully travel the road to profitability. Now here's our host, co-founder and chief evangelist of About Time and WorkMax, Mike Merrill.
Hello and welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Merrill, and today we are sitting down with Ron Nussbaum. Ron is the founder and CEO of Nuttnest, and the Nuttnest platform allows contractors to keep track of all things involving their customers in one centralized location. So in today's episode, we're going to talk primarily about communication and how to plan for having better communication with your teams, and also best practices to communicate with your clients. That will also ultimately help drive better profits. So thank you, Ron, for joining us today. Looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome to be here, Mike. I'm glad you guys had time to get us on, and I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
Well, we are as well. So I guess just to start the conversation off, why do you think it's so important to talk about having better communication in the market that we're all finding ourselves in today?
I don't just think, I know after over a decade being in the construction industry that communication is one of the root causes of all customer complaints. As being a manager and leader in the construction industry, I was able to link back about 90% of the work that we had done, the issues that came from that, to one singular communication breakdown. One time when a question wasn't answered, or it wasn't answered in the way the customer or homeowner was wanting it to be. And we kept on going, and that clear communication went to the wayside, and that's what brought upon escalated customers and led to late nights and working on the weekend.
Yeah, I think that will resonate with most of our listeners. Communication's key in everything, but what kind of, having a platform like yours or tools in place to better communicate with clients and employees, what kind of increases or benefits do you think companies are able to pick up?
So there was a study that was done years ago, and not just years ago, but recently as well, that was able to connect that 35% of time on job sites is wasted because of communication, going back and fixing stuff that was related to communication, or just general conversations about how a project should go. So that 35% of your time where your guys are out there not efficiently doing what that you're paying them to do, at that point in time, that starts to add up fastly.
Yeah, that's a big number, 35%. That's over a third, obviously. So what is it you think that really adds to that challenge? Why do you think we struggle so much with having proper communication?
I think one of the big keys to it is not having a plan. I think having a plan for communication in your company is very, very critical. Because if you don't have that dialogue set out there on how you're going to communicate with your customers and homeowners from either the sales side to the operations side and the management side, you can have three different conversations going on there. And that creates a bunch of non-clarity. And you also want to be clear in exactly what you're saying. So I think putting together a plan so everybody in your company knows exactly what that dialogue looks like. So when that sales department's talking to the customer, they're using the same lingo as the installers. And then the same thing is when management shows up out there, if there is ever a problem, they're saying the same thing as that sales and operations was saying. It cuts down on the confusion. It adds clarity. And for a homeowner that's not in the industry, when we start throwing around terms, they get confused really, really fast. And it could be a simple error in how that communication was that customer then looks and goes, oh, well, I'm not happy with how this happened, but everything went flawlessly. It was just because you had two different parties speaking two different ways. This is why I believe communication is one of the most critical things we have in the construction industry, and how we can help our businesses and our customers the most by figuring that out and being very, very good at it.
Yeah, all of that makes a lot of sense. So tell me, when you talk about a plan or a communication plan, what does that exactly look like?
So I think you put together trainings and you meet with your sales and your installation staffs and your management together to put it together so everybody's on the same page. Because it's not that we want to be bad communicators. You look at that is just kind of the reputation that the industry has taken on, because we're really, really good at what we do, and communication isn't one of those things. We're good at roofing. We're good at building houses. We're good at windows and siding. But keeping a customer updated on exactly what's going on isn't one of those things. So putting together that plan and using your team that's around you to establish what that plan is very critical, because you have to have that buy-in and everybody has to be on the same page. And then that also gives you the ability to be able to go train on that and continue to get better. You don't just wake up one day and you're an excellent communicator and the plan's flawless. It's something that you have to continue to build on, from the man out in the field swinging the hammer all the way up to the executives running the company. This is something we can all get better at, and every day we have to put in our best foot forward.
Yeah, so one of the things you kind of touched on is having more clarity or having clear communication. So what in your mind are some of the pitfalls where some of that clarity dissipates and people don't understand what you're exactly telling them to do?
Yeah, Mike, I think a lot of it just has to do with the industry, because in construction, homeowners who are our customers don't know the lingo. It's not even, you get the same effect when you take a car to go get worked on at a dealership or with a mechanic, is they start using all this terminology. But what we have multiple parties using different terminology. So you have the sales rep that was out there that's going to speak in very layman's terms with the customer on exactly what's going to happen. And then the installation crew gets out there and they speak a completely different language. And there's no cohesiveness to that. And they're saying the same thing. It just creates confusion for that customer because they're not educated on exactly what the meanings are. So by establishing what we're going to use as a company as those meanings and conveying that message from point A to point Z the entire way through the project, that customer is not going to have the confusion that comes from, say, somebody shows up and says, we're going to use 2x9s and it ends up being 2x6s. And that customer has no idea what is even being said. All they know is that there was a change made and that freaks them out.
Yeah, that's a great point. We do. I think of the military. We actually had someone on recently who was talking about this, that had a military background. And we were talking about all of the acronyms that are used by the military. And the reason those are put in place is because they help establish clear communication with less words, which decreases confusion. And so I think it's really a lot in line with exactly what you're saying. How do we pack more meaning into less words in order to keep the confusion at a minimum?
Yeah, coming from the military, I can definitely agree with what you're saying. And just think about it from that perspective of, say you're not in the military and somebody comes and uses an acronym, you're completely lost. That's the same thing that happens with our customers and homeowners. Anytime we show up using a lingo or a dialogue that they're not understanding. So making sure that how we're going to speak and present ourselves is clear to the customer in a way they can understand, or educating them on the front half on what everything is going to create a better customer experience at the end of the day.
Which, of course, yeah, I mean, to your point, the reason we're going through this process is to try and give them the greatest experience we can while also getting the project completed as quickly and as efficiently as possible so that we're not wasting time or money. They're getting their product sooner. They're not wasting money. Everybody wins, right? So clear communication is an ingredient that would improve any interaction or exchange between a customer and also the contractor, right?
Yeah, the last thing we want is people just sitting on a job site doing nothing because there hasn't been a conversation or there's not that clarity on exactly what is happening on the project. And then that homeowner needs to call the project manager to get a better understanding when all it was how the communication went ended up being the problem.
Right. So are there some tools that you recommend or ways that somebody's able to be more clear by leveraging those things?
So of course, I recommend the Nuttnest platform. That's what we specialize in.
Sure.
But I think putting their other trainings for your guys and sticking to that is very critical because if you don't do that, everything you do will not have the results that it could have. The necessary the best way to get the results is going to be to train your guys on exactly what your expectations are and set those out there and then follow up on that. Don't let it be a one-time thing. By doing this, you're going to start to notice that not only is your communication drastically improving with your customers, it will also drastically start to improve between in your organization because now everybody's on the same page. So even when an installer is talking to a sales rep, they're going to have a better conversation because now they're using the same dialogue. Because I think we all know a lot of times stuff can be lost between the front end and the back end of a project just in the communication with that.
Yeah, and I think it makes me think of, like when I have 4 children. When I'm raising my children, and I'm teaching them, words matter. Like what you say matters. So you need to choose your words wisely. And even though I might be speaking about a different situation, it's the same in business, and especially when trying to run a construction project. The words that we choose to use and the way that we describe how to accomplish something that we need to get completed needs to be clear and concise and direct. And I think this is really right in line with why you came up with a product to solve this, because you were experiencing those same challenges and decided to do something about it. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that you just said there is about being direct. I, I, I believe in being direct. I feel that's one of the best ways to communicate. But within the construction industry, I feel we shy away from that because it's frowned upon because people might think that we're coming across as rude or ju- just not coming across how we should. But I believe that if you use directness with a sense of kindness with it, you will get the results that you intend to get. There's a difference between being direct and being an ass. And I think we have a reputation to be more of an ass, but that's not who we are in the construction industry. The construction industry is the best group of guys that you will ever meet. And by letting us just be who we are and have that direct communication, we would get a lot better results because that's what the customer and the homeowners want. They just want to know what's going on. They want to be in the loop. And if we can look at them and say, hey, here's what's happening, this is why it's happening, and here's what we're doing, we're going to have the best results at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love that you pointed that out. It reminded me of a customer that we had years ago, and they were in the state of Arizona, but this controller, the CFO, was from New York, and she was very clear with me up front and said, "Hey, just so you know, I'm from New York, so I'm pretty direct, I'm pretty blunt. That's just how I am. I don't want you to mistake that for me being rude or impatient with you. Uh, I said, that's fantastic. Actually, we love that because as a vendor partner for them, we want to know what you need. If there's a challenge, we need to hear about it, and we want to hear about it right away so that we can address it. But if people think they're being nice sometimes in not sharing their concern or letting us know that there's an issue or a challenge, then that's going to fester, and they're going to grow frustrated and impatient. And then maybe something else happens, and now they're ready to hit the ceiling. And maybe we didn't even know about the first issue at all because they were trying to be nice, so to speak. So I think it's right in line with what you're saying and kind of how you feel about the same subject. Is that right?
Yeah, isn't it? To me, it's just amazing that we shy away from the answer
Mm-hmm.
because we think we're doing the right thing, but we're actually doing the wrong thing by not going with what we feel in our gut. Like, and that's, I think, what's led us kind of to what the status quo in the construction industry is, to where it's, hey, these guys, construction workers are late, they don't finish stuff on time, they're bad communicators. I think that is all corresponded out of us trying to do what we think's right. When we know what's actually right to do, we should just do it. We should just over communicate. We should be direct and let the homeowner know exactly what's happening and why things are happening, and if stuff's going over, why that is. Like that's what they want at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I've got a phrase that keeps ringing in my head. It's something that we use around here, and we try and remind each other as a team at our company. And that is, you may have heard this phrase before, and hopefully the listeners can really retain this one because I think it's valuable. The phrase goes, "Bad news early is better than bad news late." And so, you know, if there's a problem, let's just get it out in the open and talk about it so that we can come up with a solution and move in the right direction immediately, as opposed to cover it over, push it off, tone it down, try and sweep it under the rug and hope that it goes away, or hope that that time will heal all wounds. And so I think that concise, direct, clear communication early is a great way to go. And it sounds like, again, that's something that your product particularly addresses.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just amazes me, like that's what our industry is kind of like. What we're just it's waited out a little bit, or it might fix itself, when we all know, anybody that's been around long enough knows it just doesn't. All it does is just snowball and become worse and worse. And all we have to do is just step up and do what we know is right to do, and that's have those hard conversations, because they're a lot easier to have up front than they ought to have on the back end. That's for sure.
Yeah. So obviously, without over communicating, because I'll even use the word victim. I've been the victim of that sometimes too, where we actually had a vendor that we used, and they were over communicating. It was like, okay, like now it's getting confusing. You're giving too much information too often, and now it feels like it's spam instead of it's communication. And even though they were a vendor of ours, we were paying them for their product and service, but felt like it was just too much. So what does somebody do in order to make sure they have the right type of consistent communication that's clear, but then when they share that information, the customer or client or whoever they're partnering with is ready to receive that information and process it appropriately?
Mike, I think that's a great point that you bring up there, is that over communication and the trouble that can also get us in. So I think being very efficient at your communication and being able to read the customer, because every customer is going to be different. they all want to know exactly what's going on. Some of them want it like here, boom, boom, boom. Some of them kind of want that drug out a little bit and a little bit more of a story behind it, but they all want to know. So as long as we're letting them know exactly what's going on, the ones that need that little bit more information, they're going to let you know that, hey, okay, I understand this is where we're at, but I also want to know about this. They'll let you know if they need that little bit, that more communication there. One of the things that this comes back to is that training we talked about, and training your employee, training your guys on exactly what that communication looks like, so you have that standard. Like, here's where the bar is at. This is how we're going to do it on every project. And if a customer needs a little bit more from us, we're going to give that little bit more, but we know this is an effective amount of communication that's going to leave our customers with a great experience. They're going to become raving fans. And if we need to add to that, we can. But we know they don't need any less than this.
Well, and I think something you brought up about being consistent is interesting, because we are training our customers how to treat us. And the way that we manage that relationship and that communication is how we're going to get reciprocation back. So I know, we're doing a sales presentation, or we're in sales training, or we're talking with the sales team. We've got a little bit of another sort of a little phrase that we use, and it goes tell, show, tell. So tell them what you're going to tell them. So basically set the stage, and then show them essentially what you just told them, and then tell them what you told them. So tell, show, tell. And when you do that, it's very clear. There's usually no questions. And if there are, you can get to those right away, because they heard you, they watched and saw what you were talking about, and then you recapped and reviewed what you went through. And so it's just a great opportunity to make sure that there aren't any misunderstandings.
Yeah, and I love what you said about training the customer on what that experience is going to be like. One of the things, like with Nuttnest, that I love is we're putting that communication aspect back into the customer's hands. Like, we know what the contractor, what that looks like from a communication perspective, but we're making it so that customer now, if they need more communication or they have questions, they're in a position where that's on them to reach out. There's no excuses. We've lowered that barrier to entry to where if they have a specific question about a project, we're putting them in touch with the right person at the company to get that answer every time they pick up the phone. So that customer is now in control of that experience. So later on, if they can't say, I didn't know who to reach out to, or I was confused on exactly what was going on, it's now kind of on them, because we're putting them in a position to make those phone calls or reach out if they have further questions that goes beyond what the communication that was already had.
Yeah, and I think along with that, something supplemental that can be done is just to check in. So it's like, hey, we're moving along nicely, everything's on schedule, don't have any challenges going on right now, just wanted to let you know everything's looking good this week. And that gives another connection point, another opportunity for the client or the customer to ask any questions they may have, because you could say, is there any questions? Is there anything you need from me? Is there anything you're curious about? And then again, you're those touch points in the middle of that project, even though everything seems to be smooth sailing, is one more opportunity. And then you're also training the customer that you are a good communicator, that you are interested in them, that you went out of your way to tell them that there's no news. You hear that no news is good news. Well, sometimes no news is just no news. It's just, we're just out of sight, out of mind. We're not going to worry about anything until there's a major issue. And then you're going to hear from us. But when you do, we're going to filter it. We're going to tone it down. We're going to sweep it under the rug. We're going to try and minimize it, because we don't want you to be upset or not like us, right? And so I think regular, consistent communication, no matter what, is just a great best practice. And, like what you guys are doing at Nuttnest and having systems in place to help manage that process is something that I think every company would do well to implement in their business.
Yeah, I would say amen to what you just said, because that's one of the things that causes the reputation in the construction industry is that we're nothing or the absolute worst.
Mhm.
But by having that intermediate communication there, just to say, hey, nothing's changed, the project's moving along, everything's going fantastic, that sets us up with that customer that when or if something bad happens and you have to go to them and have that conversation, they're not like, wow, Ron here, and I haven't heard anything for months, and now it's going to be another 20 grand. They can at least be like, well, hey, we've had communication. Ron has kept me in the loop. Now, there might be another setback or something. It allows the customer to look at it differently than when we're not around at all, except for when something really bad's happening.
Yeah, I think we're just tracking on the same page here. I think our product, same thing, was built out of having our own challenges and struggles, trying to figure out how to get more clarity and visibility on what's going on my projects. And I think from a client perspective, they're always curious. I mean, I many of our listeners, I'm sure, have built a new home or had a new home built, and you just want to drive over there and take a Sunday drive and look at it and walk through it and take your family and show your friends. And or it'd be the same if you're having a building built for your business. You just want to see what's going on because you're curious and you're excited. And so if we as business owners are thinking about that as if we were the consumer, what would be nice to hear? What would feel good to know on a regular basis? And then we just turn the tables and treat our client the same way that we would like to be treated if we were on the other side of the table. Then I think some of these gaps that seem to occur regularly would be able to go away, and both us and the customer would be able to have a much better experience in the transaction.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. That's Nuttnest it came from a problem that I felt the pain of, not just from a company perspective, but also as being a homeowner. Like there had to be a better way for contractors and their customers to communicate, and that's where it came from. And I 100% agree with what you're saying, is that if we just do what we would expect, set like that's the standard, it would completely change the mindset in the industry. And I think most people are. It's just we're really good at what we do, and it's hard to do a lot of other things. It's like, it's hard to be the framer and the drywaller. It's hard to be the sider and the roofer. So it's hard to be the contractor and the communicator as well. That's why stuff's made to help facilitate all of this around us and make us better. My goal at Nuttnest is to be able to just help contractors better communicate with their customers so they can be like, hey, we use the Nuttnest platform. Here's this. This is how we're going to communicate. It's going to make it seamlessly so I can go do what I do really, really good. And that's your project on your home. And I'm sure that's how it is when you built your software. It's all you were trying to do was make it so you could do what you were really, really good at, but that customer have a great experience with the overall project.
Yeah, absolutely. So with Nuttnest and the platform, just give us a few examples of some of the things that you're solving that are areas of breakdown that a company without a solution is going to have to figure out manually, or just, one off from the hip.
So one of the biggest problems is when that sales rep or that first person that comes out to your house leaves, 95% of the stuff that happens after the project, they're not the person that has any of the answers, but that's the only phone number you have. That's your point of contact for that company. So anytime you call them up, it's going to be, hey, I'm not the guy, or let me get the answers to that. Or say you call the office, that receptionist at the office isn't going to have the answers. So there's this constant runaround that happens, and then the ball gets dropped because that customer never gets called back because John goes to find Sam. He gets hung up at a conversation at the coffee pot, leaves the sticky note, forgets about the homeowner, and then next thing, that homeowner is mad. It's an escalated situation because no one ever called him back to talk about the color of paint that was being used. And that is all too often what happens. So what we do is we allow direct lines of communication. I like to say we're air traffic control for contractors. We direct that customer to the right person every time on that project to get an answer. I want one call, done deal. Customer calls with a question about scheduling. They call the right person at that company, get an answer to that time, and then that project continues to move on flawlessly. And then what we've created right in the Nuttnest app for the homeowner is that job site feed. So all that communication, any pictures, when people are showing up at the house or a project or anything is right there, like in a Facebook, Instagram feed right in front of them all the time. So they can go in there and see, hey, I talked to John, the salesman, last week. This is the answer he gave me to that question. Everything's there in real time. It's all tracked for the contractor as well as that homeowner. They know. So you're not going to have any of the, hey, we'll be there at 3:00. Homeowner hears you'll be there in 3 hours. It's 8:00 in the morning. Noon comes. They're now mad because you're not there and you don't even know you're not supposed to be there yet. We're eliminating all of that.
Okay. Well, that sounds fantastic. I think contractors out there have tools, are used to using tools for all sorts of things. There are gaps in the software side and the technology side for a lot of companies, or maybe they have too many tools in some cases where, this project manager bought this system and the office wants to use that system. And then meanwhile, the customer is hanging out to dry. They don't have anything except for whatever maybe their project manager is utilizing, as opposed to the actual company who they're paying and who they've contracted with to do the job. So I think it's great that you're solving this and consolidating these processes into one place so that one line of communication can really ultimately do what we're all trying to do, and that is have great customer service. Because as we know, one of the greatest things that we can get as a thank you from any customer, aside from their loan funding or their payment, is a referral. And so happy customers make for many referrals, or at least references, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We want to help create lifelong customers and create that referral basis, because just like what you just said, Mike, is when a customer has a great experience, they're going to want to go tell people about that just like they want to when they have a bad experience. So we're using our platform to help create a customer experience that leads to lifelong customers that keep coming back for more work and bringing their friends and family. Because at the end of the day, that's what makes this all worth it for what we do. I mean, if we didn't want to create happy customers, we wouldn't be in the businesses we're in.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Ron, this has been a lot of fun. I've got a couple of questions I want to make sure that we wrap up with, but as far as one takeaway from this conversation, what's the one thing you would tell our listeners to try and remember from our discussion today?
I think there's been a lot of great things that have been said. You've shared a lot of amazing things. And I think just that consistency with whatever you do in your communication is just have the same consistency on every project to then build that momentum. And as long as you're doing the same thing over and over, it'll just start to become natural for you and your teams. And then that's when those customers will start having the experiences that you want them to have.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I think every one of our listeners can benefit from the discussion we've had today. I hope that they are able to tap into some of the goodness that your company is providing, as well as just key in on some of these great points that have been made and take baby steps to improve the experience that them and their customers are having together. So to wrap up, one last question. So, Ron, what would you say is your superpower?
I would say my superpower is discipline. It's something that I take very serious, and I think it's the great equalizer. No matter what you go to do, is if you got discipline, you can get there.
Yeah, I love that. I actually was just, we were talking before we started recording. I just finished reading again a book called Discipline Equals Freedom by the great Jocko Willink. And so I completely agree with that. Love discipline. Very last question. I just wanted to end on you sharing what you are grateful for and have come to be thankful for in your professional life.
In my professional life, I'm grateful for the people and the team around me. I think that's what makes or breaks us as leaders and as business owners is what's the team around you and what is their feeling about what are you doing and how does it impact their lives. And I'm grateful for the people that I've gotten around me. I think I have an amazing team that has the best interest of not just myself, but the mission in general to go out and help 5 million contractors. So that's what I'm most grateful for, especially here in the last year.
That's great. Well, it's been fun to get to know you, and we wish you all the best, Ron. Thanks again for sharing your wisdom, your experience. Thank you for your service in the military, and we'll look forward to keeping in touch moving into the future.
Sounds great, Mike. It has been absolutely awesome, and I appreciate you having me on today.
All right. Take care, my friend. Be well.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today on the Mobile Workforce Podcast, sponsored by About Time Technologies and WorkMax. If you liked the conversation we had today, or were able to learn anything new or helpful, please make sure to follow us on our WorkMax page on LinkedIn and on Instagram at WorkMax_. And subscribe to the show on iTunes or your preferred podcast platform so you will never miss another insightful episode. Also, if you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review and share the show with your friends and colleagues. Your support means the world to us and will allow us to continue providing impactful information with others looking to improve their results in their business and, in turn, their life.